You know, over the past few months, there have been a lot of times when I really wish the pandemic hadn't completely destroyed my ability to get videos out in a timely manner. And usually it's, oh, my ad revenue's down this month, it could have been a lot higher if I released more than one video, but this time's different. I could have totally had the video on this topic out before all the ill-informed clickbait, but here we are a day later. Basically, if you didn't know, Yasunori Mitsuda recently mentioned on Facebook that he is doing recording with the Bratislava Symphony Orchestra for music for a new video game. This isn't completely new news. We did have some news fairly recently, I believe at the end of March, that he was beginning the recording process of a relatively large project, and I think he showed just like a bunch of massive binders and stuff of sheet music. That was all cool and stuff. But this is the first time it's been confirmed to be a video game. This is great because Mitsuda makes fantastic music, and I always love hearing his sound with a full orchestra behind it, but this is bad because people who don't know what they're talking about are immediately jumping onto speculation and saying this is totally Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, I'm not going to definitively say it isn't, and the last time I made a video like this, it did turn out that the thing Adam Howden was teasing was Xenoblade Definitive Edition, but keep in mind, I was only 50% wrong on that video. The thing Caitlin Glass was teasing had nothing to do with Xenoblade X, and I'm not even sure what it was, but in case you haven't noticed, we still don't have a Xenoblade X game on the Switch, so maybe you should at least listen to what I have to say on why it's a lot less likely than you'd think. The first thing is, labeling him as the Xenoblade composer or the Xeno as a whole composer is so hilariously wrong, I can't believe people are actually putting this in real headlines. Because if you look at things he's composed for, even limiting it just to video games, because we know that this project is a game, he's done so many things that are not Xeno compared to things that are, that if you just picked one of those IPs at random, you're most likely not gonna get Xeno. Secondly, out of the entire Xeno series, which consists of Xenogears, 3 Xenosaga games, and 3 Xenoblade games, I'm counting Torna and Future connected with their games, he has done all of Gears, all of Saga 1, roughly a quarter of Xenoblade 2, and produced the entire thing, so even giving him the entirety of that, that's still less than half of the series, easily. And then, he has done a grand total of 1 song for Xenoblade Chronicles 1, which it's implied he helped with the arrangement of the Future Connected version of that. So he has worked on just over half the games in the series, and he has made significant contributions to only 3 out of 7. He is not the Xeno composer, so stop saying that in the first place. Secondly, he has publicly stated in interviews that he turned down working on both Xenoblades 1 and 2 multiple times each before ultimately accepting to work on the project. I'm going to link sources for these in the description of the video because I actually do my research. He said he turned down Tetsuya Takahashi's offer for Xenoblade 1 multiple times and for Xenoblade 2 twice before he accepted. So it really seems like he's not super itching to work on these games a whole lot if it took a bunch of convincing 2 times separated a decade apart for him to actually agree to do the projects. In 2 separate interviews for 2 separate Xenoblade games, he said that it doesn't really seem like it's his place to even be working on the series anymore because there are so many other newer composers who are giving it their own identity with their work, so him also being there seems redundant. In the interview where he talked about 1 specifically, he did acknowledge that he created the original Xeno sound with Gears, but that other composers have added their own voice to the series over time, so it's not really his turn to shape the sound of the series in his own words from the interview. And then there's also, you know, the fact that Ace, Kenji Hiramatsu, and Manami Kyoto's work on both Xenoblade 1 and 2 is intentionally going for a very Mitsuda-esque sound. Like, Torgoth is the most Mitsuda-ass sounding song on the Xenoblade 2 soundtrack, and that was Ace. Mitsuda didn't have anything to do with that until the production side of things, so yeah. And then, he has outright said that he doesn't want to do the composer-producer thing he did for Xenoblade 2 again, in the same interview where he said he turned down working on Xenoblade 2 twice before he accepted it. The only post-Xenoblade Monolith Soft project that Mitsuda has actively expressed interest in wanting to compose for is the hypothetical M-rated game that Takahashi and Kojima were discussing in that one interview with the 2 of them in Mitsuda. And you know, Monolith Soft is owned by Nintendo now, so I'm pretty sure they're not going to be allowed to make an M-rated game, so again, don't get your hopes up. There's also the completely false statement going around that Mitsuda is working on this new project with Ace, the composer duo who he worked with on Xenoblade 2 and who also did a ton of work on Xenoblade 1, which is just markedly untrue, or rather, nothing that people are using as confirmation is actual confirmation. It was literally a Twitter interaction where Mitsuda said that he was starting work on the new project a month ago, and one of the members of Ace responded to a tweet about that. So that means nothing, in case you couldn't tell. I think she was also starting recording herself after not having done so recently, so people were thinking, oh, if Mitsuda's doing a new thing, and she is doing a new thing, it must be the same thing, when it was just people who had worked together before talking on Twitter about doing their job. So, you know, not really a confirmation of a new game at all. At the end of the video, I am going to provide some of my own counterpoints, i.e. actually bring up reasons why this might be a Xenoblade game, because I researched this well enough to be able to refute some of my own points. But I have two more things about it not being one, and the first one's kind of a joke, and the second one is actually really serious, so I'm gonna lead with a joke. I don't really want Mitsuda to be involved in the next Xenoblade game, because that would most likely be a numbered game, and that would mean X is getting the shaft. Now, X, if you're just porting it to Switch, does not need a soundtrack update, but I would hope that the next brand new Xenoblade game is another X game, so they, alternate between regular series and X, and we don't have to sit on that cliffhanger for even longer than we already have been. So, I don't really want Mitsuda to compose for an X game, because I think his sound much more fits the vaguely rustic, nostalgic, fantasy-esque theming of Gears and Xenoblade 2, much more than epic space opera Perseverance of Humanity, which is X. I think every composer who's worked on the Xeno series has composed for the games with the right tone befitting their style, and I really don't think 2's sound would work with X or vice versa, so I hope Mitsuda isn't working on the next Xenoblade project, mostly because I want the next Xenoblade project or the next ground-up new game to be an X game. And then, on a more serious side of things, the last interview I'm going to link is an official one he did with Nintendo. This one, he directly stated that Xenoblade 2 was the biggest and most challenging composition project he has ever worked on. And he also directly said he doesn't want to do anything this big again in the future. Now, most challenging is really worrying to hear, because that means it was more challenging than Chrono Trigger. He put himself in the hospital, overworking himself on Chrono Trigger. Personally, I don't want him to overwork himself that much ever again. I don't want anyone to have to overwork themselves that much on any video game. So, with the unexpected success of Xenoblade 2, heavily implying 3 or whatever comes next is going to be a bigger project, I don't want him to have to deal with that if 2 was already harder than Chrono Trigger. So, I would be okay if he just stepped down from the series or only did a couple songs per game, and either of those wouldn't really fit with getting an entire orchestra to do stuff. So, yeah, that being said, I hope I'm not the only one who wants any creative really working on media in general, not just creatives I respect working on media I like, to not overwork themselves to the point of exhaustion on it. I think everyone should have the right to not do that, but yeah, if things get that hairy, then just don't. That's all I really have to say on that. But as for things that might point to this actually being Xenoblade. First off, the Bratislava Symphony Orchestra is the orchestra Mitsuda used for Xenoblade 2. So this obviously doesn't mean anything. It could mean he's going for the same sound or a similar sound for Xenoblade 2, or it could mean he liked working with them last time and wants to work with them again when he wanted to do another orchestrated thing. The other thing is, this is almost exactly the same time frame in which he recorded for Xenoblade 2 with them. I believe he started the recording at the beginning of April 2017, and it's the beginning of May 2021 right now, so the time frame would line up reasonably well for an E3 reveal. But of course, again, this doesn't directly imply Xenoblade, this just implies that it might be a similar release time frame of vague early holiday season, which I would be happy to hear Mitsuda music by then. I don't think anyone's complaining about that. I don't think any of the projects he's actively stated to be taking part in is coming out in that sort of time frame, so this could be a Xenoblade game, or just another Mitsuda thing coming out in the same time frame with the same turnaround and release window type thing. But, all things considered, this is unironically more likely to be a Xenogears or Xenosaga 1 remaster than it would be for a brand new numbered Xenoblade game. I'm happy to be wrong, I will gladly take an L if we actually get something new, but I'll also be slightly disappointed that the new thing isn't X. But yeah, do your research, and don't make badly informed clickbait on things that don't at all mean what you are trying to sell them as meaning. Next time I'm gonna do how many times does Rex actually lose fights in Xenoblade 2, which is gonna be really interesting, mostly because I'm really on a over-analyzing Xeno games in terms of shonen manga click right now, so there's gonna be more stuff like that coming up soon whenever I actually get able to make videos. But yeah, till next time, it really do be luxin sometimes, signing off.